Thank you, sir. Okay, so I've got 18 minutes. I've got enough slides to take 45, and we're behind schedule, so I'm going to have to go really, really fast. So in a world of constant change, how do you determine the right strategy? That was the question that was set to me. The simple solution is you go and hire a bunch of consultants, and they will probably give you a 3-step plan, have a good story, agile all the things, you know, agile development, agile operations, agile strategy, and agile for your agile, and then you focus on core. That took about 30 seconds. I think I should stop there, say thank you very much, and move on. But what I wanted to talk about was crossing the river by feeling the stones. So Deng Xiaoping, a great leader, economist, when he was talking about managing the market, it was about having purpose and direction and being adaptive. Now, before, obviously being in the US, and before anybody says, I bet he stole those lines too, obviously we have this whole sort of Trump thing going on. I would like to just point out, when it comes to intellectual property theft, what made the US great was intellectual property theft across the entirety of Europe. That's Alexander Hamilton, 1792. There's often a lot of bias when talking about China and the economics of China. We have a very Silicon Valley sort of centric view. But there are some very great leaders in China, both today and also in the past. Now, this is Sun Tzu. We're talking about strategy, and Sun Tzu basically explained that there were 5 factors important in competition. First of all, understand your purpose, your moral imperative, then understand the landscape, the climate, the doctrine, the universal techniques that you use, and then you're into leadership and gameplay. Now, unfortunately, we tend to, in the West, think of this as quite a linear process, a bit like our 3-step plans. In reality, it's very iterative. Now, the best way of explaining this is with a game which I love, which is paintball. So you start off in a game of paintball, and you've got a purpose, like take the building. The next step, you try and understand the landscape. Unless you're a bunch of newbies, in which case you just run into the field and it's an epic fail. Okay. Once you've understood the landscape, then you're about strategy. So, we're going to use covering fire, maybe ground assault. Then you apply doctrine, which is basically you break, say, into 2 small teams, and then you start to act. And what will happen is you'll start to act, and suddenly the climate will change. You're under fire because somebody's hidden away in the building that you're attacking with their tactical sniper rifle, taking you out at distance. So what then happens is doctrine kicks in, one group returns fire, you dive into safety, the other group, assuming you've been doing some training here. And then at this point, your purpose changes. You're now about taking out the sniper, in which case you update the landscape, you have a new strategy, and you iterate through this process. Now, the best way of understanding this cycle is actually through the mad major, John Boyd. He called it the OODA loop. So you understand this game, you observe the environment, you orientate yourself around it, you decide, and then you act. So if you combine Sun Tzu and OODA, this is basically the strategy cycle. You've got the purpose of the game, you observe the landscape and the climactic impacts, you orientate around. With doctrine, you decide your strategy based upon the context, you act, and you keep on cycling through. So I thought I'd explain this with an example. Example very personal to me. This is Fatango. It used to be one of Europe's largest online photo services, company I was CEO of. Now, we started off by trying to understand our landscape. Now, in business, that's quite a difficult thing to do because we normally use stories. This is an example of a story. This is navigation instructions for Vikings. So from Hernham, head due west towards Half, and you will have sailed north of Hatland, and that you glimpse it in clear weather, etc., etc. That means that, okay? Rather simple. But what we like to use, or we used to use in navigation stories, and that's what we tend to use in business. Maps are slightly more effective, You know this yourself, because every time anybody asks you instructions how to get somewhere, if they've got a map, you sort of point them out. And then, of course, you get the people turning up who don't have a map, and you sort of say, well, it's up the road, it's on the left, turn right, turn left, turn right, et cetera, et cetera. And then they drive off the road, and up the road, and you're left with that sort of moment of, did I actually send them the right way? Whether deliberately or, because you're just evil. So the importance of maps, when you look at a map, is you've got the position of pieces on maps, and that needs some sort of anchor. So like a compass, so this piece is north of this piece, south of this piece. And you have movement, and that's why maps are really, really useful. So I took our online business. This is a box and wire diagram of that online business, relatively small, several million users, et cetera. Created an anchor, which was user needs. Created a chain of needs. That gave me position relative to the anchor, and then added evolution, so how things change at the bottom. So Genesis, custom built, products, commodity, utility. So that gives me movement, and then I had a map. Great, fabulous. So once you can observe the environment, the next thing you start to discover is common climatic patterns or economic patterns. So things you should avoid, like, these are the rules that influence the game. So don't send out your navy in a storm, et cetera, et cetera. So with a map, we looked at platform. We knew it was evolving, so it had a future. It was very much a product at that stage, heading towards utility. We knew it had a past. So we knew everything on our map evolved due to competition. And as it evolved, it changed characteristics. It went from this uncharted world of chaotic and uncertain, and eventually became industrialized. So not only do things evolve, their characteristics change, which is why when you manage a complex environment, things like Agile is very good in the uncharted space, because it's good at reducing the cost of change, but Six Sigma is very good in the industrialized, because it reduces deviation, polar opposites. But of course, you have Lean in the middle, which is about reducing waste and learning. So we learned the other pattern, which was there was no such thing as one size fits all. In fact, there's loads of patterns, and I don't have time. So once you observe climate, then you get into doctrine. So doctrine is basically universally applicable rules regardless of context. So if you're somebody like HS2, high-speed rail, massive heavy engineering project, you start off with a box and wire, you turn it into a map, you realize that no one size fits all. So what you do is you start using multiple methods. You outsource utility, use off-the-shelf products, and then you sort of build in-house with agile techniques all at the same time. So you use appropriate methods. Now, there's lots of really interesting work going on in terms of different types of doctrine. I'm going to make a quick shout out to GCHQ, who've been open sourcing more and more code, and have recently published this paper called Boiling Frogs, which talks about how to organize yourself, cell-based structures, how to cope with disruptive change. It's a fabulous document, well worth reading. So once you've started to orientate yourself around the environment, so you understand the landscape, you understand climatic patterns, you start to orientate, you're now into strategic gameplay. And this is context-specific forms of gameplay. So by that, you take a map, platform compute, we can anticipate it's evolving. We know other patterns, things like success breeds inertia, efficiency enables innovation of higher order systems create new sources of worth. There's many, many patterns. And once you do that, you can start to see where you might wish to attack a market. And now it becomes a question of why attack here over there. A lot of people, when they talk about strategy, say, the important thing is the why. Well, actually, the first and most important thing is the where. Why is a secondary statement, as in why here over there. So back in 2005, we decided to attack the platform space. We attacked this space because we anticipated someone else was going to do a utility form of compute. I thought it was Google. Turned out it was Amazon. We also attacked this space because we had mechanisms by which we could exploit people building on our platform. We also knew we could drive it to more of a commodity form using an open approach. So that's an example of a context-specific gameplay. And of course, we went through this process, getting better all the time. We launched our service in 2006 at Euro-OSCOM, Zimki, first JavaScript-based platform as a service, serverless. It was growing like hotcakes. It was fabulous. And of course, Amazon then launched, even better. So we were getting better and better, and then unfortunately the parent company had the consultants in, and the consultants went, cloud, it's not the future. In fact, the three things we were doing, cloud, mobile phones as cameras, 3D printing, were not the future. They were not core. The core was 3D television and SED TVs. Yeah. So Zimki died. Well, it didn't quite die. The ideas I gave to a friend of mine, James Waters, who uses them in Cloud Foundry, and they are playing the game, and recently their market cap, well, they're valued at 2.8 billion. Very good. That gives me 2.8 billion reasons to hate consultants. Anyway. So how do you determine the right strategy? Well, strategy, I'm afraid, it's iterative. It's a cycle. You have to learn by playing the game. So you have to act. And you have to understand your environment. I mean, if you don't understand your environment, there's no way you can learn about the different forms of climatic patterns. You can't determine context-specific gameplay. You can't determine doctrine. In fact, you can't even determine where you should effectively attack. What you basically boil down to this is Uberize the economy or meme copying, or Dockerize the economy as it's becoming. Point about this is strategy is iterative. You learn by acting. You learn by understanding your environment. It's all about crossing the river by feeling the stones, having basically a direction and adapting as you go along. So what's this got to do with open source? A couple of things. Open source is not just technology. It's also an incredibly powerful strategic weapon if applied in the right context. A lot of companies think it's just about, oh, let's open source, let's create a little foundation or whatever. It's a very, very powerful weapon worth investing in. There are also dangers. A lot of those dangers come from misunderstanding of basic economic patterns. I mean, we've got this problem in the EC at the moment, where the European Commission has suddenly decided that open standards should be FRAND exclusively, not royalty-free, which is great, except for it probably kills off open source in government. Not exactly a good move. We also have lots of battles within open source. We've had the epic rap battle of OpenStack versus EC2. We're going to create the future of utility markets. We lost that one, I'm afraid. Doesn't mean it's gone forever. We'll probably come back in 10 to 15 years' time through our friends in China. Which, on that note, by the way, can I suggest that we also do an OSCON in China? Lots of interesting stuff going on. And we've also got the current battle, Cloud Foundry versus Lambda. Of course, Cloud Foundry has to move up the stack into more of a serverless space. It's got the momentum, but Amazon is a pretty fierce competitor. Hopefully Amazon may open source, but just in case it doesn't, we need to try and win that battle and certainly not lose our way along the path. So I've zoomed along really quickly, cutting away a couple of things. Before I go, I just want to make a really, really big thank you to the organizers of OSCON this year for getting rid of Diagon Alley and the Muggles, which is what we saw last year. It's fabulous to see the expo hall is much more, shall we say, integrated environment. But anyway, on that note, thank you very much.